My name is Kane Sultan Babbage. I was born and raised on Bangala country in South Australia.
My grandmother is from here, born in Croydon.
My grandmother is Loretta Sultan, and my grandfather is Joe Egan.
Who you? Who your mob?
My maba Aranda.
Who you? Who your mob?
My maba Aranda.
Who you? Who your mob?
Who's your mob?
Who you? Who your mob?
What's your family name?
Who you? Who you? Who you? Who your mob?
Who's your mob?
Oh, she looking for a family, darling. My great-grandmother's name was Molly Mucci, but she passed away a really long time ago. My great-grandmother's
My
name was
grandmother
Molly
is
Mucci,
Loretta
but she
Sultan.
passed away
My grandfather
a really
is Joe
long time
Egan.
ago. Who you? Who your mob?
My maba Aranda.
Who you? Who your mob?
My maba Aranda.
Who you? Who your mob?
Who's your mob?
Oh, she looking for a family, darling.
Who's your mob? Hey bub, I'm your uncle.
Oh, she looking for a family, darling.
I remember your grandmother. She used to make the best damper in town. Yeah.
My great-grandmother's
My
name was
grandmother
Molly
is
Mucci,
Loretta
but she
Sultan.
passed away
My grandfather
a really
is Joe
long time
Egan.
ago. Oh, she looking for a family, darling. Here, girl, you want to put a petticoat on under that skirt? That tree there, that's traditional dialysis tree. Here, come have a charge, sissy. She worked on the station.
west, the Wongal, to the south, the Bidjigal. So these clans all belong here in Sydney. They all share these lands. I'd like to welcome you in the language of the Gadigal and the Wongal and the Sydney clans. Tajibalang Onia, Yoli Perongo Marakungorang, Gadigal Wongolora, Ungonga Mania, Talinorangun, Banyajiminka Chakalania. That means on my behalf and on your behalf, we acknowledge country. We acknowledge the clans of this land, the ancestors and the spirits of this land. We welcome you on the country, not as visitors or friends. We welcome you as brothers and sisters, as family. We extend our hand in friendship and welcome you to country, and we embrace you as family. Nalayanyago, Krabra Bana Barebago. Nalayanyago, Krabra Bana Barebago. Which relates to your theme, Bridge to Tomorrow. Nalayanyago means let us walk together, hand in hand. Krabra Bana Barebago, meaning we dance today and we sing today and maintain culture today. So our culture has a future tomorrow. And we can do this together, hand in hand. Nalayanyago. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a great Congress. Didgerigor, thank you.
Good morning,
What are dreams? But a place you can live in hope without limits. What are bridges? But paths made of steel and concrete and human ingenuity that takes you from somewhere to where you want to be. But nobody builds a bridge alone, and bridges aren't built from one shore. They are built when different groups of people make a leap into space, a leap towards connection. Coming together. That's how you build a bridge and how you change a world. Here, now. At ICA2023, over 1,500 actuaries from over 50 countries are connecting online and in person, leaping towards the future, changing the world. Because now more than ever, in an age of increasing complexity, the world needs actuaries with the courage to lead. Actuaries who understand risk and the risk of inaction. The times call for actuaries who are in a room innovating, who create new products, industries and jobs, who solve societal problems, making the world greener, caring for the ageing, enabling affordable and available insurance, unleashing new energy, solving a banking crisis, easing inequality. Because what the world needs right now is hope. It needs forward-thinking actuaries to solve the biggest problem of all. What will the future hold? That's why actuaries like you are here, now, online and in person from over 50 different countries. Here, connecting to make the world safer, richer and more equal. To build a world and a society that lasts. To build the bridge to tomorrow. Welcome to ICA 2023.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Naomi Edwards, and I am President of the Actuaries Institute of Australia. It is my very, very great pleasure to welcome you to the International Congress of Actuaries 2023. I would like to thank Matthew Doyle for welcoming us to the lands of the many Sydney clans. And I would also like to thank our Indigenous dancers this morning. The Indigenous dancers were dancing a contemporary dance today, but they represent a culture that is over 65,000 years old. and that is a theme that we will be returning to again in this conference. For now, though, I would like to welcome to the stage the Honorary Stephen Jones. Minister Jones is the Assistant Treasurer to Australia. He is the Minister for Financial Services, and he is here to give all of you a very warm welcome on behalf of the Australian Government. So please give a warm welcome to Minister Steve Jones, the Assistant Treasurer.
Thanks so much. It's wonderful to be here. In Australia, it's customary and important that we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. I want to thank Matthew Doyle for his warm and gracious welcome to country. I acknowledge the Gadigal people and the Wongal people as the traditional custodians of the land on which this great conference is being held today. And we pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend that to any First Nations Australians and indeed First Nations people who've come to this wonderful conference from around the world. I know there are people who've travelled from the other side of the world here today. I understand there's over 1,500 delegates from over 60 countries, and that's truly amazing. Isn't it good to be able to do this and not on a computer screen? It's great to have a conference where you don't... Yeah, that's worth it. It's great to give a speech at a conference where you don't get halfway through it and somebody sends you a text message telling you that you're on mute. But 1,500 delegates, 60 countries, that's really amazing. I'm tempted to crack a joke about the probability of 1,500 actuaries gathering here in Sydney together. But I know that a lawyer cracking a joke in a room full of actuaries is highly probable to end badly. So it's great to have you here. So Naomi, thanks so much for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you today, and indeed to the Australian Actuaries Institute and to the international body. Thanks so much for choosing Australia, and I hope you have a wonderful stay here, and that after your conference you're able to spend a bit of time to get around and have a look at our wonderful country. The Institute's put together a really good program from inside the insurance business and from further afield. I also want to congratulate the Institute on the recent release of your green paper, Not a Level Playing Field, exploring issues of inequality, and I want to address a few of the themes that you've highlighted in that paper. As well as being a good place to come for a conference, Australia is now a very active contributor to the strength of global financial institutions and to the global response to the challenges that face us all. I'm proud to be a part of a government that is committed to confronting these challenges. If you believe in evidence-based policy, then data is the place to start. And as the world takes on the challenges that now face us, those insights, the insights that data brings to us, have never been more important. We can't talk about any of this without talking about climate change. The government is now making sure that Australia does its bit. As a government, we've legislated an emissions reduction target, 43% by 2030, and have a net zero commitment by 2050. These are things that we must do as Australians, but as a part of a global community to ensure our future. In the words of your opening introduction, to ensure that we have hope for the future. The impacts of a changing climate are already being felt here in Australia. Bushfires, storms, floods are hitting harder and hitting more often. Challenges or changes to long-term average conditions are pushing us towards new normals. 3.5 years ago, if you were visiting Sydney and wanted to see the great sites like the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge and Bondi Beach, storied to us in Australia and around the world, regrettably you'd have been out of luck. They were hidden behind a veil of thick smoke. Months before the first case of coronavirus and face masks started to sell out in Sydney shops, as dozens and dozens of bushfires burning up and down the New South Wales coast covered the city in a foul haze. Tragically, that bushfire took 33 lives and burned over 17 million hectares around the country. That's about equal to the size of the agricultural land of the United Kingdom. The fires burnt north, south and west of here. In early 2022, a series of floods in New South Wales and southeast Queensland became the costliest natural disaster event for insurance costs in Australia's history. One of my first visits after being sworn in as a minister was to a town several hours north of here called Lismore in the New South Wales Northern Rivers District. Now, a sign on a telephone pole showed a high water mark from the storied 1974 floods at 12 metres. At the peak of the 2022 floods, that sign was now underwater because during those floods, the floodwaters climbed to over 14 metres. In the aftermath, people had nowhere to live. So in Australia, when we talk about the effects of climate change, we no longer talk in the future tense. It's here and now. As we all know, the most exposed communities are in northern Queensland, in the Northern Territory, northern New South Wales, and here in Western Sydney, where there is a greater threat of extreme weather. And it's low-income earners who live in areas more likely to be impacted by climate change. To put it bluntly, when a disaster hits, it's usually the poor people who suffer the worst of it. They're the ones who live in the valley and not on the hills. They're the ones who cop the heat of the sun without a sea breeze because they live out west and not on the coast. In Sydney's west, we're one big city, but in Sydney's west on a hot day, it can be 10 degrees hotter than it is here on the coast. They're the same people who struggle to afford the mitigation work, and they're the same people who are struggling to afford insurance. Last year, the Actuaries Institute released a report that found 1 million households experienced insurance vulnerability. That's about 10% of households spending more than 4 weeks of their gross annual income on home insurance. That same report told us that rates of non-insurance and underinsurance are growing, especially in disadvantaged communities. And in response to the increased risks, premiums continue to rise. And with that, households face difficult decisions between insurance and other expenses. So, of course, we have to go after the risks. In 2014, the Productivity Commission, the Australian Productivity Commission, conducted a review that found Australian government's spending on mitigation was only 3% of what we spent after the disaster. 3% compared to 97%. It's screamingly obvious that a shift is needed. The Actuaries Institute tells us that spending on disaster mitigation infrastructure can yield savings 10 times the initial investment. A good example is a levee built in a small town called Roma in southwest Queensland following a catastrophic flood in 2012. The levee cost $28 million to build. It is already estimated that it has produced savings of over $130 million for the local community. So we're taking action to put mitigation and resilience at the centre of our push for cheaper premiums and safer suburbs and towns. My government is investing in projects aimed at disaster risk reduction and improving Australia's disaster readiness. We know that reducing the risk of damage to homes and businesses is the best way to put downward pressure on insurance premiums, particularly for Australians in disaster-prone areas. We know that investment in disaster mitigation infrastructure works. And we know that the government insurers share these challenges and that neither of us can take them on alone. The government will provide over $200 million a year over the next 5 years through the Disaster Ready Fund to help communities improve their disaster readiness. That's up to $1 billion invested in our communities. This fund will support projects across Australia, such as levee and drainage systems, bushfire risk reduction projects, and more. Investing in these sorts of projects will help to reduce the risk of damage to homes and businesses in the regions they target, and will help to address the underlying risk driving insurance prices. The fund is in addition to a new partnership that we've established as a government, the Hazard Insurance Risk Partnerships. It was established from 2022-23 after our initial budget. It's an enduring partnership between the Australian Government and the insurance industry, managed by Australia's National Emergency Management Agency. Through the partnership, the government and insurers will work together to build more disaster resilience in our communities and drive access to affordable insurance. As part of its work, NEMA is reviewing existing efforts across both government and the insurance industry to develop a bank of private mitigation actions that can be taken to reduce the impacts of natural hazards. NEMA has already been tasked with pursuing public-private partnerships that can leverage risk reduction investments that the public and private sectors can jointly undertake. NEMA is scoping opportunities for government and industry partnerships that have the potential to build resilience through strategic investment and planning decisions. And in addition to all of that, the Australian Reinsurance Pool Corporation has been operating the Cyclone Reinsurance Pool since July 2022. The pool is designed to improve insurance affordability for households, strata and small business properties in cyclone-prone regions, mainly located in Northern Australia. All of this work's driven by data, and insurers hold the data that can identify vulnerable communities and high-risk areas. Data on insurance affordability and availability and coverage is often limited, and that means the scope and the scale of issues can be hard to grasp, and policy interventions can be even harder to target. We've tasked the Australian Climate Service with creating an enduring data set on insurance affordability, underinsurance and non-insurance. This will help the government to address gaps in understanding insurance affordability. It is great that insurers are working with the government through the Hazard Insurance Partnership to address data gaps. We are collecting data for two reasons. First, it allows us to share information on what works. But second, it can inform households on the steps that they can take to reduce risk and reduce cost. It's critical that this is recognised in premiums. For 12 months now, my government has been saying that it makes little sense for the government to mask the price the risk of climate change has through subsidies for insurance if it only encourages building the wrong buildings in the wrong places. For us, this is just orthodox economics. But the same orthodoxy has to be applied by insurers when they're pricing premiums for communities and households that have taken steps to mitigate their risk. If they're lumped with the same premium as people who are not taking those steps, then it's unfair. But not only is it unfair, it's bad business and bad economics because it sends all the wrong price signals. Through all of that work that I've set out above, we're doing our part, but it has to be a part of a global effort. There are two key roles for insurers. First, we want insurers to keep working with us to improve the information that we have at hand and to harness that information to target the work we're doing on mitigation and risk reduction with more and more precision. And second, we want insurers to respond when improvements are made. This was a major recommendation from the Royal Commission into natural disaster arrangements, and it just makes sense. When households reduce their risk by making improvements to their home, Insurers ought to recognise that in the pricing of premiums. And they ought to tell households in advance about the things that they can do that'll help bring their premiums down. There are big and daunting things that face us, but together we can build a safer, more secure and more resilient country. And we can work as a part of a global community to ensure that we build a safer and more resilient and more secure world. You as actuaries have a key role in that. I wish you all the very best for the conference over the next few days and for your stay in Australia. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minister Jones, for that very thought-provoking and interesting talk. And indeed, I was thinking we should give the Minister a concurrent session because he really understands insurance so well. So here we are, finally, after 5 very long years, together again in person. 1,500 actuaries from over 60 countries. Welcome, welcome, welcome. The Australian actuaries in this room are so pleased and proud to be hosting our overseas colleagues here in Sydney today. We know that you have had a long, tiring trip here, and we thank you for your commitment to our global profession. And of course, a very big welcome to the many Australian actuaries in the room today. We are meeting in a very special week for Australia. This is Australia's National Reconciliation Week. This is a week where we think about our relationships with our First Nations people. Reconciliation Week is held in the anniversary of Australia's most important referendum. It was a 1967 referendum that saw 90% of Australians vote in favour of including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our national census. And this year will also be an important year for Australia because we are holding another referendum called the Voice Referendum. And I am very hopeful that the Voice Referendum, which is aimed at giving a permanent voice to our First Nations people in our Parliament, will be equally as successful as the 1967 referendum we are celebrating this week. Australia is a country defined by long trips and by migration. We are much more multicultural melting pot than we are Crocodile Dundee. Every second Australian today was either born overseas or their parents were born overseas. That means that the Australian actuary sitting next to you may well speak to you with an Irish accent or a Vietnamese accent, or in my case, a Kiwi accent. We understand what it is to travel so far, and we want you to feel completely looked after at this Congress. If you have any questions at all or you need assistance, we have a lot of staff and volunteers here who are wearing black t-shirts, so please track them down and ask them if you need help. We do have a Congress app which you can download if you scan the QR code at the registration desk. And that has a lot of information that will help you as well. If all else fails, look out for me and I will help you and answer your questions. When I look around the room this morning, I feel incredibly proud of the talent, the professionalism, and the sheer braininess that is assembled in this room today. The theme of our conference is Bridge to Tomorrow. So what does that mean for an actuary in 2023? As the Minister said, at the heart of the actuarial approach, we build models of the future. And for centuries, we used our models to protect the vulnerable and to make society more equal and more secure. We used our models to make decisions with a long-term outlook and not a short-term horizon. Today, we are still building models of the future, but the models are just as likely to be models that are predicting the impact of climate change, or models that are counting the number of people that are affected by a pandemic, or models that are advising governments on how to build better social welfare systems. We are building better bridges to a better future because we use data for good. We are data storytellers, but we are data storytellers who care deeply about truth. We care about the ethics of the data that we use. We care about and disclose the limitations in the data we use. We care about using data for good. And speaking of good, let me digress for 1 minute. I would really like to thank the sponsors who have sponsored and made enormous financial contributions to this Congress. The Congress could not have happened without our sponsors. So please support the sponsors, visit their booths, and say thanks to them. I would also like to thank our many volunteers, many of whom are actually Australian university students who have volunteered here to look after us today. So if you get lost, ask a volunteer in a black t-shirt. You shouldn't get lost, as the layout here is very simple. All morning and afternoon tea breaks, all lunches will be held in the big exhibition hall on level 2. Now, there are a lot of sessions here at the conference, so we ask, don't follow our example and be late for everything. We apologise for the lateness this morning. Please turn up on time for sessions, and please do not leave the concurrent sessions partway through the talks. Make sure you bring your name badges to our social functions, as that will be your entry ticket both to the rooms and to the social events. If you do miss a session, don't worry, because today is being recorded and it will be available for 60 days after the session. Speaking of drinking, the 2023 Congress is not all about hard work and sessions. Sydney must have heard that there are 1,500 actuaries in town looking to party, and so they have put on the Vivid Festival just for us, and I'm sure you've noticed it all around town. And in fact, there's no better place to see Vivid than right out front from Darling Harbour. On Tuesday night, we have an amazing night planned for you, where we will be travelling by boat out onto the harbour, under the beautifully lit Sydney Harbour Bridge, over to the Opera House, and then to Luna Park, where we're going to be partying Australian style. Ladies, leave your high heels at home because it will be cold and rough on the boat, and you're going to a fun park. So it's not a formal ball. Wear something comfortable and warm. Speaking of partying, I would encourage you all to read our conference code of conduct, which is contained inside the event app. We want everybody to be able to have fun here, and we want to make sure everybody feels safe and feels respected. I'd like to very briefly finish by talking a little more about our conference theme. Reading the papers for the conference, it is clear how much work is being done by actuaries to build better models of the future and hence better bridges to tomorrow. But what really struck me when I read the papers for the next 4 days was how many papers are not just about more accurate futures, they're actually about building a better future, about building a more livable future, about building a more sustainable future. Here in Australia, we are very proud of our Use Data for Good campaign. Our new brand, which is being launched today, so go and check it out in the exhibition hall, is an A that is a viewfinder or a lens. Our new brand is all about our future focus and our focus on the human impacts of that, which the Minister spoke so well about today. Australian actuaries, including many in the room today, have come to play a major part in public policy and advice to Australian governments. We advise state governments on how to tackle homelessness. We advise federal governments on how to finance disability support schemes. And we advise legislators and regulators on how to build more equitable retirement systems. Our climate change indices are entrenched and valued by government and industry alike. Earlier I talked about the great brains that are assembled in this room. Recent neuroscience studies have shown us that those of us with highly mathematical brains, in other words, those of us in the room today, have unusually high levels of neuroplasticity in our brain. And that means we can learn things more easily than others, and we can also change our minds about things. Neuroscience breakthroughs recently have shown that maths geeks, actuaries, people like us, that we have a great gift. But with your great gift comes great responsibility. Whether you are an actuary from Estonia, an associate from Cambodia, a fellow from the US, or one of the many actuaries from Japan who have joined us today, you have the opportunity, and I would argue you have the responsibility to do great good with your gift. Your talent, your capabilities, your professional skill have never been more needed than they are today, May 29, 2023. Looking around this Congress Hall, I am so positive about the learnings that we will have here over the next 4 days. 3 days. Here in this place, we will develop long-term sustainable solutions and friendships that create bridges to a better future. Vivid may be lighting up all the buildings outside of here, but here at this Congress, I feel certain that we can light up the world. I would like to thank the International Actuarial Association for making this Congress happen. And I would now like to invite to the stage Micheline Dionne, the president of that association, to the stage to officially open the 2023 International Congress of Actuaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Naomi. You're very inspiring. Madam President, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, it's an honor and privilege for me to appear before you this morning as President of the International Actuarial Association to open this 32nd International Congress of Actuaries. I welcome you most warmly, even though it is late fall and back home for me in Canada, spring is blooming. As you all know, the ICA has a long tradition dating back from the first ICA in Brussels, Belgium, which began on September 2nd in 1895. In 2020, just a few years ago, on the IA's 125th anniversary, thanks to my predecessor, Tonya Manning, the IA instituted the International Actuaries Day on September 2nd. We now make it a yearly celebration of the founding of the global profession as we know it today. Prior to 1895, very few actuarial associations existed. Most notably, the oldest being the Institute of Actuaries from England, now known as the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. And they are celebrating this year their 175th anniversary. Associations in Scotland, Netherlands, and France were the only ones in existence before 1895. In the years following the first ICA, which served as the catalyst for the establishment of many actuarial associations across the world, including Belgium, Germany, Italy, Japan, the Scandinavian countries, and of course here in Australia. I understand you recently celebrated this year a big milestone, your 125th anniversary. So my congratulations. Whether you are here in person or virtually, thanks to our bursary program, we have participants from over 60 countries, as you've heard, but still worth mentioning again, because this is really impressive. I hope that this ICA will serve as a catalyst to the establishment of actuarial association in countries such as Cambodia, Vietnam, and many others which are represented here in Sydney. See the map of the spread of the actuarial profession across the world. I really love this visual representation of the IA's current reach across the world. In time for the next ICA, I hope that the blues will have become orange, greens blue, and so on. This map looked vastly different just 25 years ago. From their inception, congresses have played an integral part in accomplishing one of the IAA mission's aim, which is to promote the advancement of the scientific knowledge and the skill of the actuarial profession. The sessions presented here at this ICA and on a yearly basis at section colloquia represent the main delivery mechanism for actuaries, academics, and related professionals to disseminate research to a global audience. Topics that were discussed at the ICA 125 years ago were vastly different than 50 years ago also and then today. So it's progressing and for the good. Our profession is always evolving, which is quite fitting with the theme of this ICA, A Bridge to Tomorrow. One of the key resources in pursuing this mission is the 6 special sections of the IAA. The sections provide a bridge between actuarial theory and research to actuarial practice. You will see significant evidence of their role in the sessions throughout this Congress. On an ongoing basis, sections are the conduit for individual actuaries to be part of the IAA, and sections provide various opportunities for continuing professional development and networking. I do encourage each of you to become a section member, either by joining through your local actuarial association, directly to the IAA website, or at the IAA booth that you'll find in the exhibition hall. I applaud all the speakers who have submitted an abstract or ideas to be presented as part of this ICA. The organizers have assembled a fantastic program to stimulate actuaries around the world. I am also encouraged that many of our speakers this week focus on a topic close to my heart, climate risk and sustainability. Your contribution this week and in the future will help shape the profession outlook on a topic that touches everyone on Earth. With the increase in uncertainties, the world has never more in need of actuaries to understand the nature of developing risk and help prepare to face that risk. Risks are not just related to insurance, pension, or even investment. They are challenging the world environment as we know it now. It goes beyond climate risk to all facets of our lives and of society in general. We have the opportunity this week to share our experience and ideas, learn from each other, and think about how we can use our capabilities to contribute to the well-being of society in this changing world. I wish everyone a wonderful Congress. I look forward to meeting as many of you as I can and taking part in these great sessions. I now declare the 32nd International Congress of Actuaries officially open. Je déclare officiellement ouvert le 32e Congrès international des actuaires. Merci and thank you very much. I am now privileged to introduce Annette King, immediate past president of the Actuaries Institute. Annette.
Thank you so much, Micheline, and welcome everybody. Welcome to the keynote opening address, Ring the Bell Twice for Change. We are so delighted to welcome you all here to Sydney and online for the inaugural hybrid ICA. It has been quite a journey to get here, organising a major international event for our professional family with a pandemic in the lead-up. So we are so delighted to welcome you all and have the opportunity to all come together to celebrate learnings, to share and to network. While the world is ever-changing, we're all confronted with opportunities and challenges in both our professional lives and our personal lives. Some of the changes are significant and immediate, like a pandemic, requiring us to quickly pivot. Other changes emerge over time, like climate change or changing customer expectations. Actuaries are forward thinkers. We're focused on the future. We help look at different scenarios, assess different options, and help governments, organisations, and communities make the best choices about how to navigate uncertain futures. We're delighted today that Dame Inga Beale will be speaking to us about how to navigate those uncertain futures and to ring the bell twice for change. We'll hear from Dame Inga and then have a short fireside chat and then open for Q&A from the audience, both here in Sydney and, of course, online. So please add your questions to the app and we will take those towards the end of the session. Now, Dame Inga has an amazing career, over 4 decades internationally in insurance and financial services, culminating in her role as CEO of the centuries-old financial institution of Lloyd's of London. During her 5-year tenure, Dame Inga took on many of the traditions that held the organisation back. She modernised the market, introduced new technologies, and created the Lloyd's Innovation Lab. And understanding the vital influence of inclusion in the workplace, she challenged the traditional boys' club culture to make sure that the environment was much more inclusive for everybody to thrive. Today, Dame Inga will address us about some of the transformation that she has driven and her tips and tricks that she has learned throughout her career. So let's raise some energy and give Dame Inga Beale a very warm welcome as she speaks to us about ringing the bell twice for change.